Hello, welcome to the Tenfold AI podcast. I'm Heather, joined by Matt, founders of Promo.ai, who also happen to be the sponsor of this podcast. That is purely a coincidence. How you doing, Matt?
Pretty good. Waiting for our sponsor to pay up.
They're very cheap and
Yeah. Papa needs new headphones.
Yeah, maybe they'll bake us some cookies someday or something.
Ooh, I'll take it.
I actually did. You don't know this yet, but I did make an impulse TikTok purchase for you. It's for a birthday or something. I kind of just want to tell you what it is, though.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because when I tell you, you'll be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I saw an ad on TikTok for it's this little drum cymbal, like the ones behind you, right? Like a top hat. Is that what they're called? So it's a top hat that you connect to your car, to your dashboard.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like in your air vent or something, but it's so that when you're drumming on your steering wheel, you can hit the top hat.
Yo. That is
like $12.
Awesome.
I had to.
Oh, I used to drive back and forth right after I graduated high school. I worked on this ranch out in like southwestern Colorado, out in the middle of the sticks. And it was to get out there was probably like a 12-hour drive. And I used to always have a pair of drumsticks just sitting in the passenger seat. If I would have like a long stretch of just straight flat highway, I was drumming my ass off the whole time just to stay awake. Yeah. Getting on those Red Bulls. So it's going to make me feel young again.
I was like, it's just fun, man. I've never seen one. I'm like, maybe he has one. Who knows? But if you can inject a little fun into your day at places where there wouldn't normally be anything fun, why not?
I could not agree more. I just noticed my watered down Gatorade just looks like a jar of pee.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah. I'll put on my show pants.
Right. So Matt, what are the health benefits of urine consumption? Is that where your AI genius comes from?
It's the peptides, I think, or something.
Yeah, let's not go that far into biohacking.
No, thank you. I ain't got time for it.
Speaking of weird stuff people do, you were telling me about a study that I'd like to know more about.
Yes, the Anthropic Economic Index report. Is that the one you're dying to know about?
I am curious. You know me, I'm going to question data all the time because I'm always thinking of outliers and how did they get this information? But
yeah, I think the first really interesting thing here is how quickly AI is being adopted. It's just like blowing the internet out of the water. But I don't know if you recall, so do you recall the year that you got the internet in your home?
Let's see. I was probably 14, 13.
Yeah, that's about
Probably
right.
About that. Yep. So that would have been.
Actually, that's no, that's about right. Yeah, because
it probably would have been on the later end, maybe 14. I was homeschooled, and from what I saw, homeschool families were a bit earlier. Maybe not earlier than everybody else, but earlier than they were in a lot of other trend adoption, because it was seen as like a education utility.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm like very curious now. Let's just do this for shits and giggles since you brought it up. Rate of AI adoption by homeschool families versus public school. See, that's fascinating because I just thought that I would have thought the opposite, right? Like when you were talking about your experience with that, I was thinking that's going to be you're going to be way behind on internet adoption. But then obviously, if you're schooling from home, this is critical. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of necessity there.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the parent side, like curriculum development, daily lesson management. I could totally see homeschool parents using AI a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, I don't even know. Like, this is kind of a weird question to ask this because we're pulling. Well, it looks like, what is this coming from? Yeah, I mean, perhaps a decent sample size here, but okay, so is significantly higher. So AI adoption among homeschool families in 2025 is significantly higher and often more flexible than with public schools, where uptake is
Yeah.
growing but tempered by policy, training gaps, and uneven implementation. Yeah. Okay, I got a story to tell you real quick. I don't know
Yeah.
if I've told you this before on here, but so I went to public school and we got a grant to get computers and internet when I was in 6th grade. So like, how old are you in 6th grade? What are we talking here?
Like 12.
Yeah, so let's call this like 1996, 1997. We get some computers in our computer lab. And I think, and I don't know why I remember this, but we had 13 computers and our classroom size was 25 to 30 kids. So when you're going in there to explore the internet, you're partnered up with a friend. So I'll never forget the day we first go to the computer lab, and it is like, and everyone's like, we got the internet. And everyone's like, what the fuck is the internet? Teachers,
You want one?
yeah, teachers didn't know either. So we go in there,
Totally.
and the brief that we get from the teacher in the computer lab is like, what do we do? They sat us down on a computer, showed us how to turn it on, and we're like, what do we do? Like, well, you just go to Internet Explorer and you can find out any information that you want. We're dumb kids. We are dumb boys in public school. We're 12. We have no curiosity for anything whatsoever. And so then there's like some rumbling amongst the groups. We're all in a line. And me and the partner that I'm at a computer with, he has a great idea. And she's like, we're like, well, what do you type into this thing? And she's like, well, you just type in something and then you go www dot something, like whatever you want to can think of, because there was no search engine at this point. You're having to go to actual directly to a URL, perfectly typed.
Hmm.
And so we're like, we just couldn't think of anything. She was not giving us any ideas. And so my computer partner, Brett, he goes, type in www.boobs.com. And I was like, great idea, Brett.
Like, finally, an idea guy.
Oh my gosh. And so we type this in, and it's a website. It was a website in 1996 or 97. And
Probably the first website.
exactly. And the screen, I mean, remember how slow it would load. So these are just like giant JPEGs on this like dial up internet. And so the home screen is
Yeah.
just like a picture, and it is rendering from the top to the bottom, and so like we
God.
see the
It's
heads
creating some
start to render.
anticipation.
Yeah, exactly. And then it starts to get down here, and we're like, it's gonna
Here it
happen.
goes.
Oh man, our teacher was over our shoulders so quick.
Oh my God. Those were the days.
Yeah, they were. They were.
I just looked up the other day. I can't find it right now, but I was looking up quotes from respected, credible people in the age of the launch of the internet, specifically quotes predicting that it was not going to work, that it was a fad.
Yeah, I bet those are
And
great.
there's a lot of them, and they're hilarious. It's like, you know, it's never gonna it's never gonna work, it's never gonna happen, nobody's gonna use it, that kind of thing. And I like to look at those as we're in this, different tech era, because we hear some of the same things, on LinkedIn and whatnot.
My gosh. Okay. We could just we could just implant AI directly into all of these. From the Daily Mail, internet may be just a passing fad as millions give up on it, the article claimed. Researchers found that millions were turning their back on the World Wide Web, frustrated by its limitations and unwilling to pay high access charges.
Yeah. Doesn't that sound like some very recent
MIT
AI
studies.
articles? It does.
Okay, the growth of the internet will slow drastically. Most people have nothing to say to each other.
Most people have nothing. Well, that never stopped anybody before.
Yes. In fact, Paul, the people that have the least to
Who
say
have
talk the most.
This is 100% true. And that's why we record this podcast every week.
Yes. Yes. Trendy and oversold community. That is killer.
Well, just buckle up, fellas.
Yeah.
95. You have no idea what's
My
coming.
gosh, I know. Could you imagine going back and being like, hey, we're going to, like, there will be a day when we purchase a car vent hi-hat on a streaming platform called TikTok, where you can watch an endless stream of 1 minute
Right.
videos that load instantly, and you are fucking like, the videos load as fast as your finger moves. They would shit their pants if they heard that. There was no
Yeah.
way that they would believe it.
And buying that top hat was a little mini mental break in between a mashed potato recipe and an alien encounter video. And I'm like, oh, little palate cleanser. Let me buy this top hat. And what about the aliens? And that's just a normal Tuesday.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, this happens billions of times. This exact exchange. Oh, just glorious. Okay, so back to economic disparity. Speaking of palate cleansers.
I'll just have cognitive whiplash constantly.
Okay, so obviously early tech adoption is concentrated. Small number of geographic regions. This was interesting to me. And a small number of tasks in firms. Okay, I'm kind of curious. All right, the geography of this. Okay, so they're releasing geographic usage data and all of the US states. Okay. Yep, correlates with income. Let's see here. Singapore and Canada, highest countries in terms of usage per capita. In contrast, emerging economies, including Indonesia, India, and Nigeria, use Claude less. DC. Well, I mean, it's clearly because of weapon systems, right? Like, I mean, I'm just guessing that this is. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, like, I would only imagine around the Pentagon if you were to put a heat map on like AI processing or even like bandwidth from data centers going to the Pentagon has got to be bonkers. You know, I mean, it's been going on
Think of
since
all
before any of us have heard of AI, but most certainly now that we've all heard of AI and the demand for data centers is growing, I am sure the Pentagon is chewing up some GPUs.
Mm. I'm just thinking about how lengthy all of those bills are. You know, like 400-page bill that nobody read. Like, what? Write it with Chat GPT or Claude. Who cares? Nobody's reading it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Do you know how many just worthless attorneys around DC? Like, oh my gosh, like Lobby Row in DC would just be a ghost town. All right, let's see what else we got. Systematic enterprise deployment of AI. Oh, let's see. While similar, differs in specialized ways. So their API heavily on coding tasks, not surprising, especially because it's Claude. They rock at it. Uh, in business. So 77% of businesses are using it to automate. Interesting. Let's see. Overall, we find evidence of weak price sensitivity. Yeah, that's interesting. Nobody is, yeah, go ahead.
So this is just Claude that it's
Correct. Yep.
measuring.
Yep.
Yeah, I've not heard any, you know, any private use of Claude really. I've only heard of companies, professionals using it within professional context.
Yeah.
When I hear of private use, I'm hearing ChatGPT more than anything,
Yeah. Yep.
and Gemini a little more because of image capabilities.
Yeah. Claude has really done a phenomenal job with coding. And as a result, I think because Anthropic really put their flag in the ground on writing code, it means that they can't introduce a ton of reasoning into the models. Because if you're trying to vibe code with a model, it's like you really don't want it to reconfigure your question. You don't want it to guess what you might be asking. You want it to kind of not answer you until you're clear. I think that's where a lot of vibe coding projects go wrong, is you've got a model that will like always spit out an answer, especially with the high reasoning models. So they'll always spit out an answer, but you can't code that way. That's just a recipe for a nightmare. So that would check out to me, that people aren't like getting relationship advice on Claude. Whereas if you
Hmm.
if you have a ton of reasoning built in your model, like GPT-5, for example, it's not really going to answer your actual question. It's going to reconfigure it in a way that it would predict that you would want it answered. Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way they're framing that study is kind of um I don't know, misleading, or it's not a good representation if they're saying AI adoption disparity,
Hmm.
income wealth disparity among AI users, but they're talking about one chatbot.
Yes, exactly. Yep,
Not to say the study means nothing, but it's just definitely a factor to consider.
totally. So, okay, this is Claude. Okay, this is a very interesting thing. Okay, here's all right. So, peep this. So, this is the usage trends across different industries. So, you see, you've got
Mhm.
like, this is probably coding, computer and mathematical sciences, but education, very interesting, is trending upwards. This is the fascinating thing to me right here. Check this out. Business and financial operations on the decline, architecture and engineering on the decline, management on the decline, design, entertainment, sports, and media on the decline. Peep this. This is Claude.ai usage. So this is in the actual chat interface. This is not their API, which you saw over here. If you come up and we look at where are they talking about their API, where's this? So it's showing, but here it's showing that its API usage is on the upswing, with 77% of business uses involve automation usage patterns. What this tells me, but then I look at the
Mhm.
decline on the chat app, it tells me that businesses are getting hip to the idea that this won't cut it. Like,
Yeah.
and they're, I think that our fear, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, or not our fear, but like with what we're doing with pro mode, you're kind of like, we talk to people and they may be like giving up on the idea of AI. It's like, but you're like in this chat thing. What are you talking about here? Like, that is not,
Hmm.
yes, we're calling both of these things have the same name. Unfortunately, they have the same name, but goddamn, these are not the same thing. What are we talking about?
Yeah. My favorite prospects are ones who have been using a chat GPT, a Claude, Jasper, you know, chat wrapper um, interface, and they've exhausted, like they're no longer impressed.
Yeah.
They've exhausted that tool. They're like, okay, we see what is happening here. This isn't going to cut it for this use. Like, we can't publish this. We can't depend on this for whatever reason. It's not accurate. It's hallucinating. It's boring as hell, whatever the reason is. And they're looking for more.
Yeah. Yep. They're realizing they've
And
been using a hammer when they need a shovel.
yeah, and it's those are my favorite prospects more than I've never used AI before. You have different challenges there, like expectations and what are we doing here. But the ones who've tried those tools, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Because then it shows they're ready for that API level, context engineering
Mm,
facet.
hmm.
Like, let's really do this well now.
Totally.
You've tapped into the the technology enough to know it's something, but also enough to know it's not enough in its current form.
Yes, you nailed it.
So that's encouraging, those numbers or those statistics that you're finding, I
Hmm.
think.
All right, let's jump to something else here. So I don't know. I think that like I got this. I subscribed to this newsletter, and the link to the full article was had expired. It's like, it's got UTM parameters and everything in it. So it was an old newsletter, so it had expired. So I have this on the Hollywood Reporter. So I'm just going to go ahead and apologize for all the ads and spam on this ahead of time.
Okay.
Okay. There's this there's a startup, Inception Point AI, and what they're doing is they are producing 3,000 podcasts a week, all a bunch of different lengths from like 5 minutes to, an hour long on a variety of subjects. But the entire business model is to identify like top search terms for that week, trending topics, and then just crank out a bunch of content with those keywords for trending topics or trending search terms.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts here?
So, a couple questions. These podcasts, they're AI generated video as well, so they're not real people.
Don't know. So, like, this is saying that
I'm
they're
assuming if
hosts.
they're
Like, okay, here, I don't think so, to be honest with you. So, if they have video in them, I'm guessing they do not, because the company, gosh, it says right here, the company is able to produce each episode for $1 or less and then attach programmatic advertising to it.
hmm It says hosted by one of about 50 AI personalities they've created, including food expert Claire
Come
Delish,
on now.
gardener and nature expert Nigel Thistledown, and Ollie Bennett, who covers offbeat sports. So they at least have images there. I don't know if there's video accompanying
I
this.
just don't think that for a dollar you would be able to get video on there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking, let's even call it 30 cents a minute. I mean, I don't even think you're coming close to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so I'm thinking of all the ad monetization strategies using content. I guess the first era of that would be the blog, right?
Hmm.
So if you've ever looked up a recipe and you see tons of ads everywhere and pop-ups and this and that, that website was created for the purpose of monetizing with ads. And so they're on a programmatic display network, a demand side
Well,
platform.
we're actually witnessing this right now on the Hollywood Reporter.
Totally right. News publications have done it. Any like regularly consumed content that you can get a high traffic volume to a website or an app, you're able to monetize it. The weather app is monetized. There's in-app display ads
Yep.
there. Most news publications, unless there's a paywall, and even then sometimes there's ads. The recipes, blogs, lifestyle stuff, marthastewart.com, the Pioneer Woman. I'm just thinking of like my personal web journey and sometimes even seeing when they became monetized.
Yep.
Like you kind of were an early follower and then you're like, oh, damn, they sold out. They're
Yep.
monetized now. So this is that same sort of business model, I suppose. They're using intent data. Like, hey, we think people are probably interested in this. We're looking at SEO tools to tell us what people are looking for, and then using that to inform high volume content output.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Um, hey, I'm sorry. I've got this crazy puppy with a cone on,
Huh?
but can we take a quick break so I can address this?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to,
Yes.
let's leave this recording so it automatically edits it out. I won't hit stop. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to grab some
All right.
water.
So the vet told Maggie yesterday that oftentimes puppies will come out of anesthesia and for like a week will be losing their mind. And yeah. So I think maybe they saw like the pearly gates and then they're like super excited to be alive again or something. I don't know.
Huh.
This bitch is crazy. All right.
Funny.
All right. So we're talking about these AI podcasts. So on one hand, it's really interesting. She mentioned that with 50 listeners, there was a example of a pollen report podcast. So like what's the pollen count in whatever geography? She said if there are 50 listeners, we are at unit profitability. So just the ads sold on a podcast with 50 listeners would make that they would be making more than $1 effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I find that to be a really interesting use of AI, like it as like just a pure business play. If we were to extrapolate the ability to generate revenue off of unit economics in this way, I mean, that is like, let's say you're just running straight up paid ads on whatever platform. Like if you're a business and you're doing pay per click on Google, the amount of iteration and budget spread that it would allow you to do is like AI would empower that in a tremendous way. Like you could build thousands of ad spend models, deploy all of them, make tiny little micro adjustments along the way, as opposed to toiling over every single ad's creative as if it were the last ad that would ever be made. It makes sense. I mean, you've
Mm-hmm.
got the tooling, you've got the compute power. Why not do it?
Yeah, I think one feeling I have about it that just that it's sort of like something doesn't seem cool about it. Like, what are we doing here? Is it's kind of like fast fashion for content.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we can just turn the machine on, let it run, do its thing, and most of it's going to be junk. Most of it's going to be just disposable content, and then something might stick. Testing in marketing should really be done with some care and thought,
Yep.
right? Like if you're an architectural firm, you should be testing, but you should be testing within the parameters that make sense for your brand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's clarity, there's some direction. Okay, we're going to test, but only so far as is authentic to our brand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, hey, we might get more engagement if we have girls in bikinis on our website. But
I don't disagree.
hey, do we want to be the architecture firm known for
Yeah.
bikinis on websites?
Right. Right.
Or could that be detrimental to our end goal here? Obviously, the answer is yes. Um, so testing should be done within a marketing context,
Mm-hmm.
not just a free for all.
Totally. No, I agree with you. And I think that and this is just a personal preference thing, regarding the podcast, these AI podcasts, like I certainly would not listen to that. That's like not why I listen to a podcast. So I'm definitely not
Right.
the target audience for that. But yeah, I don't know. But it's like,
Well, you know what I just thought of?
what's that?
I saw a statistic the other day that was like something like 30 or 40% of high school graduates in the US technically can't read.
What?
Like they're under a third grade reading level. It's
Okay.
a some sizable percentage, and you can
You can't.
look it up.
Okay.
Can't read good. Certainly can't read good. And if you can't read good, you might need a podcast to tell you the pollen rate.
That's true.
And that's
That
terrifying.
That's a great point. That is a great point. Yeah, I wonder why that is. I'm trying to think, like, why is like, because I would imagine that the public school curriculum has not reduced the amount of reading involved in it. Like, what is
They
it's got to
just
be a net.
shove them through the system.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just push them through unless it's just undeniable that this kid cannot advance to the next grade.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm tracking. I'm tracking. Yeah. Gosh, we're going to get started on public school system. We're going to be here all
Don't
day.
even, yeah, don't even. No, I just think it makes sense. Like their objective is clearly to monetize content at hyperscale behavior, right? Like in a hyperscale method to monetize content. And maybe it's to prove a concept as well, to prove this high volume thing. I don't know what they'll translate that to next. But
There's
I
something
mean,
I just actually had this thought. In a
mhm.
way, we might be in a year, we might be looking at this company as like these guys might be going public. So, okay, I did have this thought wearables. So, the glasses, the pendants, that type of stuff. So, again, I don't know. It really would depend on if this type of thing takes off. All of a sudden, audio, like multimodal output, including audio, becomes really important as soon as really sophisticated AI becomes very mobile, or wearable, whichever the case may be. So if you have this audio repository without, like, we call them podcasts today because we have no other name for them. But the way that they were describing some of this audio content is like in the same way that you would like look up a YouTube video for a pollen report or go to your phone and Google what's the pollen in my area today. So if
Mhm.
they're categorizing all of this audio content, I mean, they're essentially building like the web of audio. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
these could be recipes. So if you're driving and you want to like all right, I'm on my way to the grocery store. I want to think about what I want to make this week. Let me go ahead and just listen to this weekly on my little wearable AI device. Let me go ahead and listen to, you know, 8 minutes of this cooking podcast to where, like, okay, we're going to have a Caribbean theme this week. Get your plantains, get your beans. Uh, I don't know. That would be a really good use case for this. In which case, this all of a sudden, if you're not calling this podcast, if you're not calling that thing a podcast, but you're calling it almost like an audio search, it's like Google for
Mm-hmm.
audio content, like little micro snippets of things that you could listen to, like on your like Meta glasses, on your like Johnny Ive pendant, whatever dumb thing people are going to be wearing around. In
Mm-hmm.
that case, all of a sudden, that's like worth way more than the programmatic advertising.
Mm.
I don't know. I might be making a leap here, though. I have a
I
tendency to
don't
do
know.
that.
You're usually a few light years ahead of everybody else. You might have to wait 30 years to see that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think of like, we talk a lot about brand and buying behavior, why people convert, why people want to do business with certain companies over other companies. Like this is the marketing conversation. And I just keep going back to you want you want people to buy you on brand.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal. And it might be a long time before that happens for most companies. In fact, for most companies, it never happens. It is a hard goal to attain because what it means is rather than your customer saying, I need this thing, let me go find this thing. Oh, look, they have that thing. I'll buy it. That's
Yeah.
like a product first journey. I need this thing. That's the journey. But the brand first journey is, I wonder what they have right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know what product I want yet. I wonder what Louis Vuitton has that is new for this season.
Yes.
Because I'm a Louis Vuitton girl, and I'm not. I own nothing from that brand. But example, whereas if I go to Target and I say, oh yeah, I could use a new wallet. Let me find a wallet. I'm making that decision very different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not assuming that they're all amazing. Much more critical of what I'm looking at. I am much less willing to spend a lot of money, and they know it, which is why the prices are reflective of that buying journey.
Yep.
Whereas I go into Louis Vuitton, it's $2,000 and it's behind a glass and I can't even touch it, and there's only 3 options.
Yeah.
Why would I subject myself to that? Because of brand loyalty. It's the only reason that wallet is $1,000 and this one is $50.
Totally.
Like, that's the power brand gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And that can exist in B2B. It can exist for any type of business. So we have a project going. Let's see what they can do to help us with this project
Mm-hmm.
without even maybe knowing exactly what they're going to do in this project. I just trust them.
Well, and like and when I say most companies, I am saying like probably somewhere around 98% of companies are operating in a space where they are not a commodity. They are just, yeah, every bit as much. There's competition around them. Like there kind of is no choice for that. Like you used the example of an architecture firm. Well, in any given city, there's 100 of them. Right. So you don't like, okay, you're not going to compete on price there. Maybe you have some crazy subspecialty where you design just a hyper specific type of staircase, in which case you're kind of at the whim of consumers who want this super hyper specific staircase. But other than that, like truly competing on brand is kind of the only competition that 98% of businesses could ever hope to achieve, right? Like
Mhm.
yeah, you're just probably not a commodity. There's probably a cheaper place to get the thing that you sell. So what have you got from there? you know and I think oftentimes people think of branding like we need to hire Sydney Sweeney or something like that, but it really is, we talk about this all the time, it really is just the thing. When asked what makes you different from those guys over there, that's your brand. Whatever the answer to that question is your brand. Like, we're not talking about getting some dorky ass like Silicon Valley logo and polos for everybody. Like,
Mhm.
just to clarify what we mean by brand, we're saying you're not a commodity. You're not selling like oil and silver, probably, where it's just like whatever the market price is for this thing. Hell, you even see
Yeah.
like, I mean, let's speaking of commodities, like you've got, I mean, meat is technically a commodity, beef is a commodity, but how much do you see beef sold on brand? Grass fed, grass finished, it's organic, it's local, it's farm to
Wagyu.
table. Yeah, exactly. Like even commodities are making branding plays because
Mhm.
to them there is a difference between the cows eating this type of feed versus that type of feed. That's branding. I mean, it's not something mysterious or crazy. It just is whatever the
Mhm.
answer to what makes you different.
That's very true. But I think the other concern, that's more of like a marketing philosophy, like human behavior concern, I guess. The business concern for me is, do efforts like this, because there will be more, there will be more startups that decide to start launching thousands and thousands of pieces of content. Maybe it's video or audio or copy or whatever. Does that at some point ruin it for the rest of us? Does this massive amount of noodle on the wall content that's really just a volume play? They are not curating a brand. They are not really trying to stay true to anything other than public demand this week for content. Does that influx of content that is affecting algorithms, that's now to be competed against for all the rest of us, does that suppress rankings and how others are attracting business who maybe are in a more, I don't know, honest pursuit? Or what's the word I'm looking for? Like a worthy pursuit,
Mm-hmm.
however you want to deem that. Does that suppress everybody else? And then in a year or 2 years, is it only these types of just monster content beasts in the space that are getting any traffic?
That's an interesting thought. What I would say to that is like, if I'm going to maybe try to remain value neutral on it. Like, it is a thing. There's either demand for it or there isn't. This is the beauty of the free market. It either works or it doesn't. Um, so that's just like point one. Point two, uh, like that was probably the first time that I have ever been on the Hollywood Reporter. Like, I participated in the internet since boobs.com and have never once landed on the Hollywood Reporter. And there are a million websites just like the Hollywood Reporter. It just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
cross my purview. Now, there's obviously market demand for things like the Hollywood Reporter because they still exist. If there wasn't demand, then they wouldn't exist. But like, to the point of what you're talking about, I think that it creates, almost in a way, it creates a new category. Anytime there's a new category, there's like now differentiation in the market. So if there is the thing that you're talking about where there's just this constant stream of like rapid fire AI content just streaming through, it does open the door for like IRL podcasts to be a thing. You know what I mean? It's the I mean, that is like the thing today, but it provides a point of differentiation. So then if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing like a real live human podcast, then that's like
I
it
see.
like further defines an audience for you. So
So you're saying kind of like how 100 years ago, every meal was farm to table.
Exactly.
There was no differentiation. Now you pay extra for farm to table
Precisely.
experience.
Precisely. And in all honesty, so like, there's been a podcast audience for, let's call it 15 years now. That podcast audience has grown precipitously over time, but it's still small. Like it is a relatively small number of people who are consuming podcasts. Now, they are not the audience for this. However, what this might do is it might bring new people to the medium. Because, like, if all of a sudden there's all this AI generated Good Morning America type shit that is coming out on podcasts, now you've got like a whole group of people that would have never looked at a podcast before. Now all of a sudden they're on the platform. So there are kind of like, it does create the opportunity for more users in the ecosystem, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I think that at the end of the day, it's more competition, and then more competition demands more differentiation. So whether we're talking about these
Hmm.
podcasts or we're talking about businesses publishing content on the web, it's an opportunity for differentiation, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It should be seen as that, I think.
Well, it's something you talk about a lot to our clients, and I think the more they grasp it, the better they do. It's, hey, yeah, there's AI. You're going to be able to create a lot more content. It's going to be faster than ever, easy to publish. Okay, we've streamlined the system. But if you inject your differentiators, if you tell your specific stories that can't be duplicated because they literally just happened in your company, we solved this problem for this client, we, saved the day, and this is exactly how. And here's a joke this guy just told us, and he's hilarious, and we work with him. Any real stuff you can inject into that. Now you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the speed and workflow, but you're also getting that brand scarcity differentiation effect, which
Precisely.
is key so that you're not drowned out in this sea of sameness that we keep hearing about.
Exactly. I mean, okay, gosh, what do you hear from every single marketer? It like case studies. You need case studies. We need case studies.
Every salesperson, give me more case studies.
Totally. And so let's just use case studies as, I mean, I think we can all agree that as far as marketing quality, case studies are the gold standard. This is a real customer who had a real problem that you solved in real life. Okay, great. That's awesome. Now, what you don't realize is that when a case study becomes something as simple, as soon as you are able to reconcile the fact that a case study is not a PDF, it's not a URL, if we define case study as a real customer with a real problem that you solved in your company, that's the definition of a case study. Now, there are dozens of case studies that occur in every single company every single day. There are case studies for prospects that don't close and why.
Hmm.
Good fit, bad fit. This prospect didn't close because they're a bad fit. Here's a case study on bad fit. Here are some really successful case studies. You have dozens of those that happen. Heather, you are going to get on some calls today. And at the end of all of those calls, you will have probably 9 case studies. Am I like,
100%.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So, okay. Now, if those, now, if that's the definition of a case study, why the fuck does it matter if that thing was assembled like with my fingers or with a computer?
Yeah. Did it happen?
Yeah. It's like this thing happened. The reason that we have turned case studies into these big, scary projects where we got to have a PDF and we got to get the print quality glossy paper and we got to hand all of these things out. We got to take 6 months to assemble this one fucking thing. Meanwhile, 1,000 others of those exact things happened and you didn't document any of them because you're so
Yeah.
attached to the idea that this has to be assembled by my like carbon based fingers instead of a computer. It's a real thing that happened. And now there's a way to very quickly document and share what we all consider to be the gold standard in marketing content, which is case studies. Like, what am I missing here, guys?
Yeah. Well, it's such a there's like unlearning and relearning that has to happen. You got to shatter your existing um, limitations as a marketer. You have to, because the existing limitations pre AI were the workflow. It's going to take a month because I got to talk to the sales guy. I got to talk to the owner. I got to get approval. We have to make sure it looks just like every other case study we've done. And we know we only have budget, time, bandwidth to do 3 to 6 of these a year,
Mm-hmm.
tops. And if you're only doing 3 to 6 case studies a year, what are you going to choose to be case studies? Obviously, your biggest, most impressive, the biggest client you worked with, the biggest problem you solved, the biggest win you can report. And you're going to detail that on your website. You're going to have things to send to prospects because you've only got bandwidth to make so many. But when all of a sudden, if you ask, okay, forget the workflow, forget the bandwidth, imagine blue sky. What would you do? Would you also maybe create like 20 pieces of social content about that case study?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you also mention it in like 7 email newsletters over the next few months, maybe different aspects of the case study, and then also put it on your website? And then would you also mention maybe some of those bad fit things, what lessons are there for prospects? Would you mention some smaller wins? Like, how many other facets would you talk about if resources were not constrained?
Yeah. So you're describing something that is you're describing something that is simultaneously high volume and high quality and high impact, because they are all at their surface. These are all case studies, which we've all agreed is high impact marketing. And like it being high volume doesn't negate quality or impact. So now if we can just agree from first principles that a case study is a gold standard of marketing content. And so is there is anybody going to make the argument that, yeah, I shouldn't post more real stories from my customers and how we help them with greater specificity at a much higher volume on a daily basis? We just fucking download the 9 things that happened in this company today as it comes to solving customer problems. Is that because there are so many of them, you wouldn't want to share? Like, do you not want to share as a company how great you are at solving problems? Like, what are we talking about?
Mhm.
This like this artificial is like there's an artificial scarcity that's like kind of got its hooks in marketing. And I think that that's only because there has been these technical requirements standing in between businesses like customer solutions and publication. And so that I just sense people putting this artificial constraint on it that if it's at a high volume, then therefore it is lesser. I've yet to hear an
Mhm.
argument that makes any sense in that regard. Now, I
Yeah.
agree. If you're putting out complete bullshit, like just like dribble, just nonsense, if you're not adding value anywhere, yeah, not adding value at a low volume or high volume is also not adding value. I don't think that's going to be a detriment. I mean, you can publish high volume bullshit. I mean, I scroll past high volume bullshit YouTube videos every day. You scroll past high volume bullshit TikTok every day. It is what it is. I never see something I don't like and be like, I am going to actively not refer any of my friends to this company. I don't even remember the company. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's forgettable. So the
Yeah.
downside is not there. There like kind of is no downside. So why not start trending towards a better version of doing things?
I think it's good. I don't know. I just imagine during the Industrial Revolution, which I was not alive to witness. When factory manufacturing became a thing, I am sure that there was massive pushback. I'm not buying a table at a store. I got a guy down the road who makes tables, or name it,
Hmm.
a box of nails or some screws. But over time, people realize, okay, this is still a quality product. I can still accomplish what I need. How fast they made this doesn't negate its value.
Exactly.
And then it becomes ubiquitous because it's like it's so much more efficient and consistent. And, we would never go back.
Hmm. Hmm. All right.
But
Go ahead.
one more thing. Don't you think that part of the stickiness, if we imagine that life back then, Industrial Revolution, and today, part of that stickiness or unwillingness to quickly grasp hold of a new way is because all the people who did it the hard way, the long way, are still here actively working. And they're like, I personally was creating web pages and it took a day and a half to kind of do one.
Hmm.
And now I can do one in 50 seconds. Psychologically is um that is a harrowing experience
You know it. You know it.
because you kind of feel excited, but you also kind of feel like the biggest schmuck ever.
Hmm.
'Cause you're like, oh my God, all the hours I spent doing this the hard way, and now I can do it in lightning speed. How do I feel about that? Because I used to value my work in part because of how long it took me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's like this identity crisis and
Yes.
value questioning within people's psyches that everybody's got to fight that.
Hmm. It's relatable. I get it. I get that feeling more than you could ever imagine. It's scary. It's scary, but it's inevitable.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's absolutely inevitable. And so I mean, honestly, I don't mean to get like overly philosophical here, but like the nature, I mean, this is the nature of being human is change. I mean, that is like the one thing that is absolutely certain is change. And we're in the midst of it. We're actually always in the midst of it. There's always something going on that is changing. It's just like, does it cross over into our sphere of influence? Do we notice it? There's like, I'm sure 10 years ago, there were some radical changes going on in some little corner of the world that we were completely unaware of.
Sure.
But yeah, it is the nature of it. But you're right. I mean, you were spot on. In the example of the furniture makers, they were still around. And so this was like an evil thing. There's like a whole group of people like labeling it as evil or bad or of poor quality. And in some ways they were right. They weren't wrong, but it was like, this is a direction that we're hurtling towards and it will not stop.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I've got like 10 minutes. I'm gonna get some of my AI red meat here.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I kind of want to unpack the idea of context engineering in a way that makes sense for folks.
Mm-hmm.
Promote is a context engineering infrastructure. So I thought it'd be cool if we could kind of like frame this from some familiar things that people understand. So I want to start with your chat LLM. So this is Claude, this is ChatGPT, this is Gemini, this is Grok. So there's kind of two main types of models. One is a reasoning model and one is a non-reasoning model. In a reasoning model, you might ask it a question, and a reasoning model does not take your questions at face value. They said, okay, Heather was asking for this thing. I think that this is kind of where she was headed based off of some other training data that I have to where I know what people actually want. And then it spits out your answer. This is a very familiar thing that we've all done a million times. Uh, so, like, when it comes to how do we evaluate this thing, there's some interesting, I was actually looking up some kind of like really interesting numbers in here. So, factual information. We've talked in the past about how a large language model is not an oracle. It actually doesn't have like, it doesn't have a source of factual data per se. When something shows up in a large language model as it producing a fact in the way that like Google would, I was reading that that oftentimes needs to show up as 100 unique variations of the same data. So this like an example of this would be
Mm.
like, what is Nikola Tesla's birth year? Well, there are so many articles on the internet that have him, you've got thousands and thousands of different variations of Nikola Tesla's birth year. Okay. But this was interesting. I was just kind of like wondering, well, okay, let's say we AI to know that ProMode is a context engineering platform. So the next time somebody builds a model, and let's say like the likelihood that they choose any of ProMode's content to train their model, first off, is super low. I mean, we can all agree on that. We're not going to waste the GPUs on whatever these two dummies are doing. So it's probably not going to be a part of the training data set, and certainly is not going to be mentioned 100 different ways, right? So that
Yeah.
probably will not show up as a quote unquote fact in the training data. So, you know, a large language model is just pattern recognition. So in the case of Nikola Tesla's birthday, it's shown up over 100 different ways as that being his birthday. And that's like sort of built in into the probability of that particular model. But it's not,
Mhm.
that information is not being retrieved from somewhere. It's not like going and looking, let me go into my training data book and find
Yeah.
Nikola Tesla's birthday. That's not how it works. So when something appears as fact, it is only because in the original training data set, it appeared enough variations of the same way.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of how our brains work.
Yes, exactly.
Like if you ask me what's the capital of Texas, I'm going to tell you as if it is a fact, it's Austin.
Hmm.
It's the capital of Texas. Whether that is a hardcore fact or not is yet to be determined.
And you learned that fact through maybe looking at a map, through singing a song or something like that. Like it,
Because I mean, I've probably, my guess is I have heard it, seen it, thought about it at least 100 times
exactly.
through the course of my life. So
Yes.
I've got this, you know, this vast library of stuff happening in my brain that says this is a fact. It's Austin.
And furthermore, probably none of those library associations in your brain have anything to do with local politics. Like a capital is a representation of like the federal government, and like it's local politics. So this is like the seat of government for this state. It like your understanding of Austin as the capital of Texas probably has nothing to do with what it actually is.
Right.
It's not in the brain category of federalism. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's in the rote memorization stuff from lists in grade
Yep. I
school
went to a
and
bachelorette party
that
in
kind of thing.
Austin. I looked at a map. I like it's those things that are completely unrelated to what it means to be the capital of a state.
Yeah, because now I'm thinking Joe Rogan moved to Austin. He's got the comedy place there now, and I would like in music, like that contextual understanding that's associated. Whereas if you asked me a question that has a fact as an answer, but it's something I haven't studied, and maybe I think I know, like a Jeopardy
Hmm.
question, right? Something that isn't as obvious. I'm going to guess, like if you asked, I don't know, who was the 15th president? I Unless I have memorized all of the presidents, I don't know that, but I could take a guess based on things I do know,
Exactly.
right? But I would know that's not a fact because I don't have a massive amount of data points happening to tell me that.
Exactly. So the limitations on our accuracy and quality for this general setup is we're purely limited by the training data of that model. So if we want to take any actions and the actions that we want to take, the information we want to know, whatever thing we want to occur, if it was not present enough in enough variations at a high enough volume in the training data, we're going to have lower accuracy and quality in this workflow. So, one of the ways that AI engineers get around this is with agents. So, the difference between an agent and that just standard LLM experience is that agents have tools. So, an agent is basically like a workflow, like a documented workflow, and an agent is powered by an LLM. Just like the other chat example, that could be a reasoning model or a non reasoning model. So in our reasoning workflow, they reconfigure our question for us. In a non reasoning workflow, the yellow cards are the user. The difference here is that we're going to give these models some tools they can use. So if it's not in the training data, we want to like overcome that issue, that limitation. We're going to give these agents tools that they can use. So let's say they can search the web, they can query Google Scholar, or they can make an API call somewhere. In the case of a
Mm,
non-reasoning agent, the user actually defines the tools that they want that agent to use. And you have to
mm,
give these agents tools. That's probably getting a little bit too technical. But like with a reasoning agent, they will choose their own tools and how to use them. So you're kind of in a black box with the tools, but we are able to pull in information that maybe wasn't in the training data. So we're kind of moving towards using an LLM as a computer for computing information that came from these tools. And so we're getting just, richer context because we're able to pull something in, analyze and compute it in the event that it wasn't in that model's original training data.
mm.
We run into some quality and accuracy issues here as it relates to the tools. So we're pulling in new data that we're assuming wasn't in the model's original training data, but we also kind of don't know the quality of this data. So we can do things like use Google Scholar and we could have a rough idea that this is going to be a quality data, but just a general web search, you're in the wild, wild west there. Who knows how quality that is? So you might
Mhm.
be supplementing lack of training data with poor quality tool data as well. Uh, and then furthermore, there's nothing really to analyze this data that's coming from the tools. There's really nothing to check it against aside from the original question, which is also problematic. So you might ask a question, it might pull all of this. You really don't know what this agent skipped over. Like, what didn't you pull that I might have wanted?
Mhm.
Because you're only kind of going off this initial question. There's not a rich enough association between what comes back here and what goes into this answer. Again, still a little bit of a black box. Any questions here?
Mhm. So am I understanding, like, the left side is least control?
Yes, this is like biggest
And
black box. Anytime you use a reasoning model, your black box gets a little bit bigger.
okay, so least control, and then the right side would be more control,
Hmm.
okay? Because you have hand-picked, greenlit tools that are allowed to access your training data and inform your outputs.
Totally. Yep. You're not allowing the reasoning model to like override what you're, in the reasoning
Mhm.
branch, you're basically saying, hey, you're allowed to override my question. And like, if this doesn't make sense.
Okay, more guardrails, on the right, and we're starting to think of it more as a compute layer as opposed to
Relying only on the training
an
data.
answer
Yep,
machine. Yeah.
exactly. Okay, now let's talk about context engineering.
I knew you were going to blow it out of the water.
So, context engineering solves for both of those things. So, both you can still use tools with context engineering, but you have something to reference those tools against. So, in this case, instead of
Mm-hmm.
question and answer, instead of prompt and response, you have workflows. And workflows are made up of a bunch of different components. So I'll just walk through some examples of this. So in context engineering, instead of a prompt or question, we actually have a workflow for a category of task. And so here we have two sides. We have tools. So we have a tool shed that can be chosen from. So let's say we have tasks A through Z. For task A, we always use these three tools. So that always gets pushed into the workflow. Another thing that you can have with context engineering is a data mine. So you can have your own data set that you inject into this. So if because it's kind of scary to just rely on tools, super scary to just rely on training data. So by having a repository of whatever data goes into this task for your company, for your family, for your whatever, you have this data mine here. And so you've got a big data mine for tasks A through Z. And for task A, we want to actually inject these three pieces of data from our data mine. This workflow sets off. And so we have all generally you want to have mainly non-reasoning agents and LLMs throughout this whole workflow because you're actually feeding them training data. So you kind of don't want them to go looking in their own shit as much as possible. So you want to restrict this to non-reasoning and give really specific step-by-step. So you would maybe for this non-reasoning agent, you would say, do a web search. If you don't find any primary sources, do a Google Scholar search. If you don't find any primary sources, do an API call to JAMA, for example. And then this non-reasoning LLM will then pull in these three pieces of source data and be told, this is your training data. Like ignore past training data, like wipe your memory. This is your training data for task A.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a third AI model down here that would then take each of the tools that were called. It will check those tools against the source data from the data mine, analyze all of that data, and assemble an entirely new context to be used. So we've created new training data for our LLM. We've done tool calls. We've analyzed both of those things together. And now we have created new context, which will be the training data. So then this becomes like super training data for another LLM. And that LLM is the output LLM. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 4 AI models that are going into task A, and they are analyzing and synthesizing new training data that you provided against tools that were called by an agent and reassembled into an entirely new training data model that is used to complete your task.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we evaluate this, you'll notice that our evaluation protocol has 0 black boxes. There are no black boxes because we have a data mine as training data. So if we evaluate it and we don't like this answer, we have the answer for why we don't like that answer. And it's in our
Mm.
data mine.
Okay, so this graphic, I'm assuming this diagram is the most simple form of this.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the number of LLMs can be greater,
Hmm.
all of them.
Yep.
The size of the data mine can be expansive.
Hmm.
The source data, 1, 2, 3, could be 1 through 1,000.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay. But this is the basic principle of context engineering, and the reason for going through this effort is higher accuracy, more unique content, more unique outputs.
Yes. Just quality on all fronts. This is like this basic setup is the difference between that MIT study being a 95% failure rate and a 95% success rate. Like this is how
Totally.
every enterprise AI deployment will look like this in 10 years. There's zero
Hmm.
doubt in my mind. This basic workflow right here is the key differentiator between the promises we hear about AI from people like Sam Altman and the reality on the ground. Like, why isn't this thing working for me?
Yeah. And it's why we see content approvals so high
Hmm.
with Pro Mode users.
Yep. Yep.
Excellent.
How's that? You feel like,
We're definitely clipping that out. I'm using that.
yeah. Okay. All right.
That's very good because it's, and just I'll wrap it up if
Yeah.
you'd like the show here, but we talk about building in public, right? Which for me and probably you at certain times also means like learning in public and trying out how we explain things in public in real time. What a journey.
Hmm.
Like just the journey of trying to explain this technology, why it's different, why it matters in a way that is digestible, that connects to people, has been very challenging.
Yeah.
From, for the last, over a year now, we've created so many graphics, so many slides, so many analogies have come up. Like, okay, this is how we explain it. And okay, we learned more about how that was received. Now we're going to explain it this other way. Wow, it's been a journey, but I feel like the way you just explained that really does explain the under the hood differences in a way that everybody can grasp.
Nice.
And it's not just because we're getting better at explaining it, it's everybody's learning more in
Totally.
the whole space. So, I don't know. I feel like my brain has grown 30% since starting Pro Mode.
Same. Same. Well, good episode. That was fun.
Yeah, good deal. This has been the Tenfold AI podcast, folks, sponsored by Pro Mode. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. We'll see ya.